All right, is everybody on the Portales School website? We're going to talk today about I'm going to give you some tools for research that'll be an improvement over just a Google search. Okay, we're going to try and talk a little bit about finding good sources. So when you get to, let's see, we're still a ways from everybody being on Portales. When you get to the Portales website, on the right side of the page, if you go almost down to the bottom, you'll see where it says Alexandria. We are going to click on that. That is the school's catalog for the library. And once you click on that, it'll ask you to select a site. Where are we? Junior high. So that's what we're going to click on. All right. On our catalog, unless you're on your mobile phone, you're not going to click on that. The researcher is the button that you want to choose. Okay, that takes you right to the catalog. So if you were in the library, you wanted to get some books, this would be the place where you would start. You can do a search on your subject. You can search by title. There's a lot of different ways you can explore that. We're actually going to go over to the left side where it says links. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down. And we're going to take the third link, which says El Portal Middle School. This is a free database, or it's a group of databases that the state provides. Who knows what a database is?
That's where they keep all the information.
That's really good. That's a good way to put it. It's the way they keep all the information. But what kind of information do we have in these databases? Okay. When you go on Google, you're going on what we call the free web. In other words, that's information that anybody can put out. The databases, on the other hand, have information that you have to pay for. It's a little bit higher quality information is required to pay for. A lot of it is magazines, journals. There are lots of different magazines out there and journals. Journals are like a magazine, but they're academic, that have all sorts of information about topics. These are people who are paid to research and find out information. You can't, at our library, we don't have room to store all of those magazines. We don't have the money to buy every magazine that's out there, right? We have to be pretty careful, and really there's just a few that we can have. The databases give us access to a lot more. So not just the ones that you have, but many, many more that are out there. There are also in the databases a lot of times referencing, so encyclopedias and dictionaries, all of those are available. The one we're going to start with, and if we have time, we'll look at junior edition, but the one we're going to start with, I think will work really well for the topics that you're looking at in your media class, is this opposing viewpoints in context. So click on that. Okay, so think about some of the places where you get your information from. What are some, if you're talking about media, what are some different kinds of media that is out there? Social media, so things like Facebook. How reliable is the information that you get on something like Facebook or MySpace?
Unreliable.
Why?
Because
You can just type anything you want, like, hey, what's happening?
Right. It's like people just gathering to talk, right? So you might find something interesting, but how well you can trust it, probably only about this much. You would want to check everything that you got, right? Not a very good source. What are some other sources of information we have? What other kinds of media?
Twitter.
Where?
Twitter.
Okay, that's more social media. Besides social media.
Wikipedia.
Okay, Wikipedia. What is Wikipedia?
still kind of think people post there.
Okay, so it's an encyclopedia, right? So what does an encyclopedia do of any kind? It's like a dictionary, but a little bit more
Okay,
complete than a
teachers,
dictionary, right?
just a heads up and an update, okay? For those of you that were going to attend the Google Student Account training yesterday, that's been rescheduled for tomorrow, 1:15 to 1:45. Mr. Rackman said he can get that training done in about 30 minutes, so if you're interested in that, in D. King's Room, 1:15 to 1:45 tomorrow, we'll do that before you start your TARP test. Yeah, look, a full day of fun for you. We aim to please. Thank you very much.
This is a little concerning. This is blood. Okay, so an encyclopedia gathers lots of information about lots of different topics. How in depth is the information in an encyclopedia? More than a dictionary, but not as much as a whole book on that topic, right? So if I look up Abraham Lincoln in an encyclopedia, I may have a page about Abraham Lincoln. So I get some of the basic information about him, but it's not going to be as in-depth as if I get a biography about Abraham Lincoln, right? That's a whole book devoted to him. So all encyclopedias are sort of good quick reference, but they're not really something where you want in-depth. Wikipedia has an extra problem with it. What is it? Right, anybody can post on it, right? Anybody can put information on there, which can be good and can be bad. It can be good and then it can get up really fast. What's the bad part about it?
Sometimes not true.
All right, it's not always true. And who checks it? Right, there's not. It just sort of relies on people to check itself. There's not an editor like there is in a print encyclopedia who looks and makes sure that everything that's going into it is factual and true. Okay, let's try something else. This isn't working. Let's see if this one opens up. I know it's opening up on the kids' pages. So some of you are there, but some of you are not.
Yeah,
Hit the refresh button.
I already hit it.
Okay, did you go back? It's not going to go back in? No, I'm not getting anywhere. All right, so we've talked about encyclopedias, we've talked about social media. Give me another form of information that you might, where you would go to get information.
Google News.
Maybe something, what is something that comes, your parents might have a subscription to it. It would come to your house every day.
Oh,
Magazines and
newspapers.
newspapers, right? A lot of times we read newspapers online now, but at one time everybody got it every day. So a newspaper, how accurate is a newspaper? Should be pretty accurate. Foolproof? No. Everybody, there are times when they get in a hurry to get that information out, and sometimes there are mistakes, but generally it's pretty accurate. It's a good way to get some good information. Okay, so newspaper, what else? You might turn this on at night when you go home. The TV, we get information from TV, right? Oh, this is frustrating. Okay.
And I'll click on it if you want to walk around maybe.
Okay, I'm going to try going into the high schools instead. I'm going to change the site.
While you're waiting, just kind of scroll on that or read on that page just a little bit.
What about a kind of media that we listen to? Radio. Okay, so where does the funding come? Who pays for things like television, radio, internet, newspapers? Who pays for that? What people? Do you pay for TV?
Not yet.
Okay.
No, we're not.
So who pays to create a TV show? Do you know where the money comes from? Okay, it usually comes from advertisers. Same with magazines. When you open up a magazine, lots of times they're advertisers, right? You watch commercials. When you go to a website, do you see ads sometimes?
Yeah.
Right. And we need to remember that those ads, those people they pay money to put their ads on that TV show, or to put their ads in that magazine, or in that newspaper. Their hope is that a lot of people will see it and see their advertisement. But it also might influence the information that is coming through that site, or that is coming out of that newspaper, because they might say, if you print this article, we don't want our ad in your paper. We're not going to pay for an ad. If you do this TV show, we don't want to put our ad in that TV show because we don't think that it's reliable.
When you put that on.
Go a little farther. Okay, so let's look at those of you that have opposing viewpoints up. If you look at, you'll see that there are lots of different options. Go to the very top of this page, and there should be a search box. And let's just put in, we're going to put in a really general, there. What do you want me to type? Mass media. How does it get there?
I just X all the way out of like the whole entire Chrome.
Okay. So you notice on this, as it gets loaded up, we have all kinds of different media represented on this page, and there's all kinds of different information sources. So remember what I told you, a database is a collection of information. This database collects information from all of the different things we've talked about. There are videos. So there's a video here. It says the inevitable burst of the social media bubble. There are audio clips. It ever loads. Has anybody got it loaded on their page? You can type in mass media.
Mass media?
Mass media. Another thing you'll notice when you start typing in a subject that you want to look at. Do you see how it brings up a list? That will give you an idea of the best terms to use when you're searching. Who could tell me what their topic is that they're planning on doing research on?
How does movies affect American society?
Okay, so you're looking at film and movies. So that's one of the things we want to think about. What are some key words? What are some similar words to movies? Film. Yeah, synonyms. They're the same. That mean almost the same thing. Right? Films, movies, cinema. Okay, so TV would be different than film, right? We could be looking at the movie industry. Let's see what happens. So if I type in movie, do you see what comes up? We have movie, movies, movie industry, movie theater, movie star, movie actors, movie directors. All of those things are going to be slightly different when we look at it. We're going to have a little bit different kinds of searches when we see those. So let's look at the movie industry. What do we mean when we say movie industry? What does that mean? What's industry?
It's like
You're on the right track. The community, that's a good way to think of it. Industry usually, though, is associated with what? Money, right? This is the industry. We talk about the industry. This is what produces movies, what makes movies, who makes money at movies. So we're going to be looking at all kinds of things, not just the movie stars and directors, but what other things might we be looking at?
who the people creating that.
Right, there's lots of jobs that are affected by the movie industry, right? You've got people that, you have the technical people that edit the films. You have people that provide costumes and makeup. You have people that write, you have the writers. You have the directors. You have the actors. You have the people that do sound effects and special effects. You have people that prepare food for the people who are working on the movie.
Some are even homeschooled or schooled on set.
So you might have teachers. So when we talk about the industry, we're talking about all of those things that factor into the making of movies. All right, so in the movie industry, look on this page, we have, oh my gosh. All right, I'm going to come back here. Anybody type in? Okay, so you can see that on the page for movie industry, there are some audio clips. There are some news clips talking about, some news articles about, so from NPR, National Public Radio, there's some news clips there. There are some newspaper articles that you can look at. There are magazine articles. If you look at, you'll see the title, and you'll also see where it's coming from. So, America, this magazine, American Spectator. Then it's going to see, there's one that says reference. What do we talk about when we say reference?
Isn't that like from someone like they give you like it says you work here?
Yes, you are right. But we're using the word differently in this case. But you're exactly right. That's one way to use the word reference. In this case, we're talking about things like encyclopedias and dictionaries. Usually it's quick reference. So there are places where we might get definitions. So let me see. What are the examples they have? There's an introduction to the film industry from a book called The Film Industry. So that's giving us an overview of what we're talking about. So reference is a good place when you're not exactly sure what they're talking about. It's a good place to get definitions. It's a good place to get, an encyclopedia overview article. All right, how about statistics? What might we expect to see in statistics? So go ahead and click on revenue and inventories. So statistics are numbers. This shows a chart that lists
Operating revenue.
Zoom in if you go move your recording here. Click on the 3 bars and okay. So if you look over here, this is showing how much people made in 1998, and it takes us all the way to 2003. It's telling us how much money, for instance, so we have motion picture and recording industries, we have motion picture and video, and we have sound recording. So how much money did people make who were...
So that one? Operating revenue?
So how much money did people make in sound recording versus motion picture and recording, versus video? So this is both of them combined. And motion pictures made a lot more money. But if we look over here, it looks like the sound recording is growing hardly at all. We started off with 11,000 revenue, went to 12, 13, 13, 13, 13. So the last few years, it really hasn't grown. Whereas movies, we can see we started at, 48, 51, 54, 55, 60, 64. It continues to grow. So that's what statistics are going to show you, different kinds of numbers, percentages of things. There might be polls, there might be data. That's basically what it's going to be, is data. Okay, let's go get back here. Okay, academic journals. Who knows what an academic journal is?
It's like the thing right at the bottom. It's like the thing right at the bottom.
Oh, your journal. You're making a connection with writing. It is writing.
What is academic journal? It has to do with schools, right? So all of us are familiar with magazines. What are some magazines that you might read? People, 17, Sports Illustrated. All right, so all of these magazines, they hire reporters to write articles. Sometimes they have what's called freelance writers. They write an article about something, that fits in their magazine. So Sports Illustrated, the articles are going to be about different sports things, about different sports, athletes and games and different kinds of things like that. They may or may not play the game. They may not actually be experts on it. They go find out as much as they can and they write an article about it. Academic journals are like magazines. They come on a regular basis, just like a magazine does, but they're on academic subjects, any academic subject you can imagine, and the people who write in them are experts on that field. So there are academic journals that are science journals, like on biology and physics and things like that. And the people who write for them are professors usually. They're people who have studied that their whole life. And when they write an article, say they've done an experiment and they found out something amazing, they write about it, they submit it to their journal before it gets published, it has to be approved by other people who are experts in that. So what do you think the quality of those journals is going to be?
High quality.
Yeah, it's going to be really high. It has a higher standard that it has to meet. Okay, it has to be, it's been checked and double checked and triple checked. So if we're doing a hierarchy of how much we can trust a source, Wikipedia, where is it going to be? It's going to be on the bottom, right? There is going to be some information in there, but we don't know how much we can trust it because it's not checked at all. There's nobody that's going through and checking that.
Is that why it's blocked in our school?
That's exactly why it's blocked on your school websites. It's fast and easy, but it's not fast and easy if we have to double check and triple check everything in there because nobody else is doing that for us.
I thought it was because it was unedited, like inappropriate for school.
Well, it's unedited, which is why it's inappropriate. It's not that it has necessarily bad stuff in there. It's that nobody is checking it. There's no editor.
So there could be like plagiarism and such like that.
Well, there could be plagiarism. There could just be stuff that. Well, okay. Let me give you an example. My field is children's literature. Right, I teach classes about children's literature. Anybody remember the books Amelia Bedelia? Did you guys read those? Mm-hmm. Okay, well I actually read an article a couple weeks ago about a woman who, when she was in college, was intoxicated, drunk, and she and her buddies thought it would be really funny to change the Wikipedia page for Amelia Bedelia. So there's a wiki page for Amelia Bedelia. And they went in and they wrote that this was the story of a set of children's books about a maid in Cameroon, Africa, who liked to wear funny hats. 5 years later, she is doing something else and something causes her to, she's actually, I think she is like a teacher or something. She gets on the Wikipedia site and guess what is still there? Her statement, which is completely false, it's still there. Nobody's checked it. Nobody's fixed it. Nobody's corrected it. Okay? That's the problem with Wikipedia. Anybody can get on there, and anybody does. Now, does that mean that there's not true, accurate stuff on there? No. There's a lot of accurate stuff on there. What's the problem? We don't know. How do you know that that statement that you read is accurate? You don't know because it's not being checked. It's not being edited. That's why it's on the bottom. Our next level then would be things like newspapers and magazines. So newspapers and magazines do have an editor.
Do wiki answers also do that? You know, the website wiki answers?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like same page.
All right. I'm going to say in both places, so kind of both ways. Websites, they could be, some of them are going to fall into that edited position. There are websites that have editors that update it, maintain it. There are websites that don't. How do you know? How do you check that? Right, we're going to look at where it says about. We're going to look at where it says who wrote this, how long ago was it updated, who's checking it, what kind of credentials do they have. Okay, so newspapers and magazines have an editor. In other words, they have someone who, what does an editor do? They read it, they check the facts. They make sure that before it gets published, that
it's a good like image on their company.
Right, exactly. They're sort of the watchdog. Okay, then the next level then is going to be academic journals. Why are they above newspapers and magazines?
Because they have a higher standard in what they're
Okay, so academic journals, first of all, the authors themselves are experts. The authors on a newspaper or magazine may or may not be an expert on what they're writing about. A lot of times they're just good writers who know how to research, and they research all of those kinds of things. Whereas the people who are writing in academic journals, that's their subject. That's what they spent their life studying. They're experts. Second, they have two editors, basically, right? They have the editor of the journal, but they also have that peer, what we call a peer review. In other words, other people who are experts review it first and say, yes, you've done your job right. The science is correct, your facts are straight, you've got a great understanding of what's going on in this field. So by the time it gets published in that academic journal, you can pretty much trust that it's accurate information. And you don't have to do that fact checking. Wikipedia, you're going to have to check everything you get out of there, everything. That's why it's not a good source. It may be a good source to start you can go look at it. Oh, okay, here I've got some information. Now I can go check those and see. But you're never going to quote Wikipedia in your articles or in your papers, because immediately whoever's reading your paper is going to say, oh, she's quoting Wikipedia. Who knows if that's even accurate? Right now your paper is suspect because you're using not a good source. Okay, how about books? We didn't talk about books. Where do books fall into this, do you think? Yeah, I'm gonna put books there. It depends. Books are going to be like websites, and that they are going to. It's going to depend on the book where it falls into. But most books, all books have an editor if it's not self-published. A book that goes through a regular publishing process has an editor. That editor is checking sources, checking to make sure things are factual. Another thing that a book has an advantage of is the time. It takes time for a book to be printed. There's a pretty long process. And during that time you have a lot of time to sort of fact check, you have a lot of time to let things sort of sit and get a better understanding. So books have an advantage really over all of these. It's an advantage and a disadvantage. It's an advantage in that there's more time to think about it. They tend to be more deep. You can think more deeply about a subject. So we're not just covering this little 30 pages of something. We're talking 100, 200, 300 pages that we're exploring this topic. So it's a lot more thorough, a lot more deep. But that time can mean that it's not as immediately accurate. An academic journal comes out faster, so it's the more recent information, right? It's the most up to date.
All the reactions and reflections we had to write, where it had to be over academic journals, we had to search for them, like in the library, and so.
Right. So in the old days, you had to go look through indexes to find the journal because the journal was actually present in your library. Now, you get to search in these databases, which make it a lot easier.
What do academic journals usually write about?
They write about everything. There are academic journals on every kind of subject. So there are academic journals on music composition, on music history. There are academic journals on athletics. People who write about they study what it takes to be an athlete. What's the best way to train for this particular sport? There are academic journals on English. So people who study things like Victorian novels. There are journals just on Victorian novels. There are journals on 20th century writers. There are journals on teaching English. There are journals on everything. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of journals out there. And that's what those databases will help you to do. They index it. Let's just take a minute. We'll look at the other databases maybe. Okay, so this one's kind of a nice one. You can see that it has all of these different things. So I'm glad it's come up now. So we have websites. It's linking you to websites. The Motion Picture Association of America, the American Film Institute. These are reputable websites. The nice thing about going here instead of going to Google is they're sort of controlling the information instead of just anything wild. They're being a lot more specific and giving you higher quality sources. So it's a nice place to start. Okay, so we've got academic journals, we've got statistics, we've got reference, magazines, news, audio, videos, images, and then viewpoints. What do you think viewpoints are? So the point of this particular database is they're looking at topics that are divisive, topics that have more than one way of looking at things. And so they pull opinions. They will take two different opinions, and you can sort of compare the pro and the con of this particular subject. You'll notice over here where it says everything, all of those things we just looked at, if you wanted to isolate. So for instance, they're just pulling you the top hits in that particular subject, but there are actually 477 magazines on the movie, articles on the movie industry. So if you just wanted to look at those magazine articles, you could click on that and then kind of look through those. 13,000 news articles on the movie industry, 259 audio clips. So you can kind of see how much is out there. If we go up to our search, you can also search on specific things that you're looking for. You can browse, just kind of get it. If you're not exactly sure, you can kind of look around. And then you can play around with different kinds of searches. So we can combine advertising and movies. Let's see what happens if I try that. Okay, so we're looking at smoking portrayed in movies increases teen smoking. That's an interesting topic to think about. So it's talking about how when we show smoking in movies, people smoking, it makes teens more likely to want to try to smoke.
Do you think that children play violent games because of the
Okay, so what would be some things you would search if that was what you were doing?
How has video games impacted with
Okay, so that's your question. So now how do you pull words, keywords, and searches from that question? Okay, so you're going to look at specific things, right? If you're looking at violence.
We have a missing cat, black cat with a red bill. It says leave us on the side. If anybody finds it, can you please turn it into the office? Thank you.
Okay, so you might look up specific video game names. You might look up just video games. Okay, that would be one. So a review, how accurate or how, remember we're looking for reliable and accurate information. A review is going to be what? It's going to be pretty subjective. Somebody's opinion about whether or not they like the game. That would be something to think about. Okay, any other questions? Let me take you real quick to the other site. It's a little bit different. I mean, we can give you just a minute to taste what that's like. Oh, actually, no, let me do this. Let me give you these papers. This will help you with your research. So what I've done, one of the important things, because where you got your information matters, we have to it's really important that you let the people know who are reading your paper where you got that information. So what I've done here for you is a handout where you can keep track of the title, the author, all the information, where did it come from, okay? You'll need the title not only of the article, but you need the title of either the website or the book that it came from or the journal that it came from. Does that make sense? So usually there's going to be two titles. There'll be the title of the individual article and the title of the journal. So for instance, the title of your article might be Michael Jordan's reign in basketball, and then the title of the journal or magazine would be Sports Illustrated. Does that make sense? You'll have both of those.
It's like having fruits and a little more specific what type of fruit. So like Sports Illustrated, what was the article? Category.
And there may be both an author and an editor. There might not be. Now, if you're on a website, sometimes you have to kind of look around for that. The nice thing about the databases is usually they will put all of that information in one spot for you to find. You want to know when it was published, how long ago, how old is this information? Was it something that was published last week or was it published 10 years ago? So we want to make sure we know all of that. And you can take some notes and maybe write down why you think the source is really important. Why is it going to be a useful source for you? Because then if you have to come back to it, you've got all of that. You know how to find it. You know where it is. And you'll help them. Okay? All right. 224. Is that the number of minutes?
Do you have any questions about the site or navigating? What do you think about this? I don't.
Well, it is confusing and it has a lot of things.
It is confusing. There's a lot of information out there. It's having to weed through and figure out what's the most important.
Better than Google?
Yes.
Could you type in the whole question to Google? What is the effect of media arts on society?
And you get like,
Don't do it.
categories. It seems dependable because it actually like
Oh, I think it's nice. It's very and I think it's better than Google because it has more trustworthy sites.
Yeah.
Jonathan, what were you going to say?
I have a question on soil.
I don't know. You might have to just,
One of those things is called technology.
right. Technology is great, except when it's not.
Okay, everything that Mrs. Christensen just went over will be on the classroom website. I uploaded one video already, so you need to rewatch, like tomorrow maybe, or the next time you research and you can't remember it might work with the show, it's all school, and then something with an A, and it'll be discussing it on there. And utilize it. Is this just for this classroom?
No, you'll be able to use this. You guys get used to doing this because you'll be using this from here on out, and then you'll do similar things when you get to college.
It loaded, yay!
it's like really late.
Sorry.
Hey, better late than never. It happened, right? 50's better than a 0. Better late than never.
What's this?
How?